Nature versus nurture. The penultimate question that delves into the heart of what makes us who we are. Are our personalities and feelings shaped by the environment around us, or do we shape it? Scientists have been trying to discover the answer to this question since the dawn of the scientific revolution. But it wasn't until the 1960s that one psychologist, B Nuebauer, dared to put this question to the test. What follows is one of the most unethical and extreme cases of trying to determine the true answer to the question of nature versus nurture. Robert Shafran, Edward Galland and David Kellman, three men sharing identical DNA but different families. They were born and separated at birth by the Louise Wise Services, a local adoption agency, and found themselves the unwitting victims of a twisted social experiment that lasted for over 15 years. They had been handpicked by Dr. B Nuebauer due to their shared identical DNA and placed with three different families, each with different socio-economic backgrounds, one poor, one wealthy, and one somewhere in between. When the time came for their adoption, the knowledge that each one had two brothers was kept a secret, and their lives became the subject of a decade-long investigation under the guise of regular checkups that posed a variety of questions, from likes, dislikes, to a battery of questions aimed to evaluate their psyche. B Nuebauer, the man behind the experiment, underwent his initial medical training in Switzerland after being raised in Austria, and was one of the lucky few that managed to escape the control of the Nazi regime and fashion a new life for himself in New York. As he began his medical career, he spent part of his time researching psychological development in children and gained some renown for his insights into the field. But it wasn't until he turned his attention to the triplets that he found himself treading uncharted waters. In an experiment that could not be repeated today, he decided to separate three brothers at birth, put them into three different socio-economic circumstances with no knowledge of their shared relationship, and assess them for as long as possible to see how they grew and developed. Each family was given an older sister, unrelated to them, to act as some sort of control arm for the experiment. Nuebauer was adamant he could finally answer the question of nature versus nurture, and the experiment began. Under the guise of regular checkups, he then mounted his investigation of a lifetime by following the children for over a decade to track their growth and progression, trying to find how their circumstances were affecting each of their lives. From the perspective of one of the boys in his experiment, they simply had this to say: I remember getting tests done, IQ tests, colour vision tests, communication assessments. I remember people watching me, taking notes, making videos of my behaviours, every time at regular intervals, every activity documented, every intonation. During the testing period, one of the boys developed an alarming pattern of behaviour during their childhood, and was noted to have repeatedly banged his head against walls and various furniture. There was no clear information as to what circumstances these behaviours were brought out in, but it may well have spoken to something deeper, perhaps even some sort of longing, or the setting of his upbringing. After over a decade, these checkups one day simply just stopped. For each of the triplets, this may have well been where the story ended. However, many years later, their paths would cross again. For the first time since their birth. Through dumb luck, two of the brothers found themselves at the same college campus, a year apart. As Robert Shafran took his first steps into college, he was greeted as a familiar face, all of which mistaking him as Edward Galland, who had arrived at the college 1 year earlier. As word spread, they eventually found themselves reunited once again. The third brother, David, found their photos in the newspaper with a mixture of shock and disbelief at his apparent resemblance to his two long-lost brothers. It was only a matter of course before the three were united once again. Their reunion was a joyous one, initially. However, it was short-lived, as one of the brothers, Eddie, continued to battle demons throughout his life before taking his own in 1996. Although there are no specific details, it is generally accepted that he had the most difficult experience growing up, despite little information on each of the siblings' upbringings. Now, what can we conclude from all of this? Despite their separation, they exhibited remarkably similar traits in some aspects of their lives. They all shared the same interest in wrestling, partner selection, even the same brand of cigarette that they chose to smoke. Their mannerisms were also strikingly similar. Despite this, their lives did take different courses. Through this limited information and sample size, there is a suggestion that the environment they grew up in shaped them. How far nature and nurture are truly intertwined is an unknown to this day. But it does suggest that many of the traits that define us are written in our DNA. When the adoption agencies were initially confronted, they denied any such allegations of the sinister experiment conducted on these innocent children. It wasn't until much later that the truth was revealed. Nuebauer himself, it seems, realised how the public would react to his studies and decided against publishing the final report. The records were sealed at the Yale University Library until October 25, 2065. Some have tried to exhume the evidence and results, but none have been successful yet. So the question remains, what did they truly find? Who were the parents that participated in these studies? Are there other families that were studied? How far does this go? One day we will know the answer. For now, all that we know is that this curated life of scrutiny that these children underwent left an indelible mark on their psyche. Thank you for joining me as I investigate the hearts and minds of the scientists that came before me. If you are new to the channel, welcome. If you are returning, thank you for your ongoing support. Please like and subscribe.